Um, Hello. I'm about to send the link now, so you guys can check out the slide. And I also share my screen so you can also see what is going on. Control. Hello, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
The issue, like I had to set up Zoom now, like right now, because my Zoom, I don't know, it had an issue. So I'm sorry for the delay. Like I'm still under the setup process, but like I'm just trying to share the, I want to send the link to you guys in the chat section now. Or facing some difficulties. Just a minute, please.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I'm on it. Okay, I just sent the link. Like the link is in the chat. You guys can check it out. Let me now share my screen. Like I just sent the link. It's in the chat. You can check it out. Okay. Okay, guys, can you see my screen now? Hello, guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So let's start from the first one. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take you guys on layout techniques. So I'm Emmanuel Mwegonwa. I'm a backend developer primarily, but yeah, I'm going to take you guys on this one. Let's start. I hope you guys have gotten the slide, Sha. First of all, this is CSS layout. Like before we didn't have flexbox and stuff, people used to style and position things using just this position and tables. So in CSS now, the default position is this static position here. This static position doesn't have the properties of right and bottom, top, and the rest that helps us move things around. I'll still show you guys some code and explain it better. Then the next one is this relative. The relative position kind of is like the static position, but it has all these other properties like right. I'll still show you guys more about it. Then we have the fixed position. You can place elements on the page at a specific position and they will remain there no matter what, whether you scroll or you don't. Then we have the absolute. The absolute is more like the relative, except the way, oh, I think it's better when I show you guys the difference between relative and absolute, except it's the way it gets its value. Don't worry, let me just keep that aside. Hello. I'm guessing you guys can still hear me.
We can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Did you guys hear what I said about the fixed position and absolute?
Yes, we did. Sure, we did.
No.
No? Okay, let me go back to the fixed.
Recap.
The fixed position, which is this one here, kind of places an element at a specific place in the page. No matter, it doesn't care if you scroll or not. Like, I'm going to show you guys some code. I want to run through this slide, then I'll show you guys some code just because of time. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about would be flexbox. Well, flexbox are like a new introduced kind of way of styling things on the page. Before, all we had was positions and tables, which were difficult to style things because you had to specifically place them at strategic places, which was not that easy to do. It was kind of difficult. So we have the flex direction. Actually, I think it will be better. Let me show you guys some code first. I don't really like talking much. I'll show you. Okay. Let's get this. I have to get this off my screen. Okay. I just want to show you guys some examples first. Let's start with the position. Okay. I just created a basic HTML page here. It has a few divs inside, 1 to 12. And I added a little bit of styles to it just to make it look like this. So let's start with the relative position first. Let's say item 1. Like why I didn't start with the static position was that by default elements would have the static position, and the static position doesn't have all these other other properties like right, left, and stuff that helps us move things. But let me just show you a basic example first. Like this is the first one, this static right here. This static position is the default, but let's just test out this one first. Let me show you something. Let me save my file and refresh the page. Nothing really changed, but with this position now, I can shift the first element. This item 1, look at it here, is the first element right here. So like with this position relative, I can shift it anyhow I want. I can be like right, let's say, or let's just be like left rather, like left. Let's be like 10 pixels, or let's make it more obvious, 100 pixels. you will notice that it shifted by a bit. I don't know if you guys noticed. But let's change this thing back to static. If I try refreshing the page now, even though I have another property left here, shifting it 10 pixels, it doesn't work. That's just the way static behaves. And that is the default position on HTML. So the relative position is like the static, but all these other properties of left, top work on it. Okay, let's try on that one. Let's say left, let's give it top of 100 pixels as well. To come down a bit, let's refresh. Okay, I don't know, you notice, right? Like it went down, went left. Let me just go to the next one we have. Okay, we can also try out right as well, but right will take it off the page. Let me just comment this one out. Yeah, you can try right as well, but right took it off the page. Like it's pushed it this way, but left would push it this way. So something like that. The next one I want to try now would be the absolute. Well, let's still use item 1 on this. And when we refresh, nothing changes, but we can now use the position property as expected as well. Let's say position. Okay, sorry, we can now use the left properties as we. Okay, let's use the right instead. Let's say right 0 pixel. Okay. Sorry about, oh, sorry. Right, 100 pixels, sorry. Did I get something wrong? Item position absolute. Just give me a minute. Oh, sorry. With the absolute, let me just explain it rather. With the absolute property, your HTML, like how will I put it? With the absolute property, your HTML doesn't just limit itself to, like, the absolute behaves like the relative, except that it's kind of like its basis is right, left, and other right, left, top, and bottom property around the page itself, not just. Let me just try and show you an example rather. Let's be like position absolute. Let's minus 100 pixels. Oh, sorry, I had a typo here. That's why it was not working. There's a little dot here on the page. Yes. Okay, you can see it now. Like if I set the right to 0 and refresh, you'll notice that this one shifted from here to the end of the page. I hope you guys can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So like with the right property, with this position absolute, we shifted the right, this one from the left over here to the right. Well, let's try the same thing with the relative one. Let's see what it does. Oh, let's get rid of that. Let's just. When we refresh, even though we set the right to 0, it doesn't just shift it over there, because there's a way the relative property behaves that is a little different from the absolute. The absolute property always looks at the page. It looks at the page. Right here is left 0. Right here is right 0. But the relative property, when you say right 0, it's like right here is right 0, right here, somewhere around here. So for you to move it to the right a little, you have to set it to something. If you notice this overflow, like now use and explain it to you guys. Oh, let me just make it a little bigger so okay. Like that, there's something I set in this base style that's not letting it work out well. Check it. Okay. Just leave it out. Or I don't know how easy and explain this thing better, but let me just go to the fixed, the one that's a little bit different from the rest of them. Position fixed. Now with the position fixed, the way it behaves is a little different from others in a way, because like I told you, no matter what happens, it stays at that same position. So even though you had to scroll, so let's just say position fixed item 1. We really need to specify anything. Let's check it out first. Let's refresh the page. So I don't know if you noticed, like this one always stays at this position, even though we scroll. We can try this with any other one. We can try it with, let's say, 5, for instance. Let's refresh. When we scroll, the 5 doesn't move. And one other thing you guys should have noticed is each time we set the position up to fixed, it changes the position of that element in the page. Like for instance, it kind of like brings it off that DOM. It brings it off the DOM, the layout. It brings the element of the layout, and it kind of like takes it above the original place it is. So if we want now, we can also set the position of this to maybe, let's say, right 0. And that should take it back to where it should originally be. So now, like, even though we scroll, it always stays there at that place. You can add pixels if you want, it's the same thing. It's just like the units and stuff. Yeah, the same. Let me just go to the next one, which is static. Sticky, sorry. Sticky. Let's use item 6 for this one. When we set the position to sticky, it behaves like the other elements, except when it gets to a point, it sticks. Let me show you an example. Let's say we set the top to 10 pixels. When it's 10 pixels from the top, it will stop scrolling. Let's refresh the page. Like, for instance, I don't know if you noticed, this 6 doesn't flow. This 6, it kind of flows until it gets to 10 pixels from the top, then it stops and stays there as if it's fixed. Like, you might have noticed the 6. We can also put any other element if you want, like maybe 7, or we can even do it with 2 elements. Let's say, oh, sorry, let's just do it this way. We can make 6 and 7 just stay there. sorry, sir. Wait. Oh, let me just do separately actually. Okay, yeah. Like we can make two elements stick when they get to a certain position. We can increase this thing, let's say maybe 100 pixels, then it will stick. If we get here, it sticks like at 100 pixels. Let me just go over it again. Fixed keeps the element at a specific page, at a specific spot in the page. It doesn't scroll at all. We used 5 for example, and I told you guys like when you like set the position to fixed, it kind of like brings out that element from its original flow on the page and kind of takes it above, like it kind of takes it above the other elements in the page. And for that reason, you also have to set the position. If not, it will just end up being somewhere around here. If I remove the right now, it will just end up being somewhere around here, but it will be fixed anyway. So just stay there like that. Then the absolute.
So please drop down your browser. This is half down.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Yeah. The absolute property, it's a little bit resembles the relative, but when you set the position of the absolute, it's like, how will I put it? It looks at the page, then it takes its right, left, and top. It takes its right, left, top, and bottom from the page itself, not just from its position. Like for instance, now when we set the right to 0, let's refresh page first. Like this one is over here. Let me just try it with another one. Like let's say 3. If you notice, it shifted 3 over to the end, which is where right 0 is. So what it means is that right here is, let's say, 0 for left. Then right here at the bottom here is the 0 pixels for right. You can also try something like maybe shifting it left by let's say 200 pixels. It will just shift it from the left over to, I think the best way to explain the absolute is just by using relative to show you guys the other behavior of it. Okay. Right here, if we set while we're using the relative position, if we set the right to 0, it doesn't seem to do anything because of the way it works. The position absolute uses the page as its kind of, it takes the page as the actual kind of, like, how I put it, it is the page. It's when you set position to absolute, the right, left, and top, bottom attributes, properties will be looking at the page themselves. They won't be looking at the position where the element is. But when you use relative, then you can now move the element relative to its original position. Like for instance, now if I move this thing right, let's say 10, it will move relative to its position. It was somewhere around here, right? 10, it's moved towards this way by 10. Like, but when you use But when you, okay, let's use the one element one. But when you use the absolute, you notice it shifted the one almost to the end of the page. That's because it's looking at the page itself and not just the position of the element. But relative just looks at the position of the elements, then it knows whether it should shift it by 10 pixels or in the right position or in the left or in the top, something like that. Let me just go to Flexbox and explain a bit. Okay, Flexbox is another way to lay out our page. Instead of always using this, Flexbox is another way to lay out our page. Instead of using positions where we have to manually set where each element is supposed to be on the page, we can use Flexbox and some of its properties, and to help us achieve kind of the same thing. There's a few things we should know about the flex direction. That's the, okay, let me just open this other one. Yeah. This is, I didn't have a lot of time to design it, so this is just like a basic flex I created. Let me open up the code. This is the HTML. Just apply the little style to it. Then this is what to, okay. Okay, wait a minute. Yep. So if we want to create a flex, let me just show an example first. We use the display flex property, and that creates a flex for us. And by default, the flex direction, sorry, is set to row. We can also set it to column and it will change the position for us. Let me show you something. Okay, like flex direction. Let's set it to column. Okay, you notice when we set it to column, it layers the elements on each other. By default, it's set to row. That's why everything is next to each other. And there's something else we have here. And we have this justify content, which kind of like we can use to position our elements on the row, like on the we call this the main axis, since it's the position, since it's the position it's at. Like this is kind of the main axis, and by default the main axis is the row. We can set it to column as we did before. Okay. Can use the justify. We can do a few things with this. We can set it, by default it's at flex start. That's why when we do this, nothing really happens on the page. It stays the same because by default it's flex start. But if we change it to flex end, wait, and then flex end. flex end.
Click the flex direction rule. You need to close it.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks for that. Yeah. So when we set the justify content to flex end, it shifts the whole thing to the end. But when it by default it's at flex start, which keeps the whole thing at its normal position. We also have a few things there like am I typing? Sorry. You can set space between. What it will do is shift each element to a certain place, to some certain position, but it gives spaces in between them. Like assuming we're using this normal position, we'd have to calculate all this stuff and manually set all these elements to be at the right position. Maybe like if you want to set it, we might have one right here, maybe 3 will be around here, the middle here. Then we'll have 4 here. Like you can see how it's kind of difficult to do. So that's why they kind of introduce Flexbox for us. We have space around. It gives space in the middle and also around the elements. Like flex are used a lot in creating nav bars and other stuff we use on the page. And we also have some other attribute here called align items. I just want to focus on this align item, then I'll go to grid. I don't want to talk about this align content now for some reasons. Note, these are just some of the properties. These are not like all the properties. These are just like the basic ones that I just want to talk about here. So the justify content kind of works by, like spacing, like it works kind of on the main axis, which is this row. It works by like either spacing them in between or around or shifting them to the end or to the start. But the align content works on the cross axis, which is like the vertical axis like this. We set our flex direction to roll. That's why it's going like this. So let me just use the align items first. We can set it to center, and that will like, I have to set the width. I have to give the page a distance. I have to give the container a height first, so it will know what to do. Like, let's just say 50 pixels for now. Well, let me make it a little bit more. Let's say maybe 200. Let me give it like a border, so we can see what is happening well properly. Let's just like 2. Okay. Do that. So I just wanted us to get a better view of what is happening. Like this align items works on this cross axis, which is the vertical axis. Assuming we change the direction of the flex direction to something like colon, it changes the way the whole thing works. You notice now that the main axis becomes this way. Then the align items works this way, which is like, let me duplicate the page and show you kind of the 2 versions. Okay, in this version, we set the flex direction to roll. Like here it is. Then we set the justify content to space between. this justify content is in charge of, as in manipulating the flex children in different ways. We set it to space between. We can also set it to some other thing like, sorry, we set it to space around. We can also set it to something like space between, which you just give space between them, and that's it. Like it has only space between them. Then when we set the flex direction to column, it changes the main axis to be the column, as in to be this vertical axis. So now this flex, so now this justify content space between now works on this vertical axis instead of working the other way around. Let me set it to column and refresh so you guys can check it out. So the justify content works on the main axis, which is by default it's set to row, and we set it to row in this one. Then in this part we set it to column. So the justify content it works on the main axis. Whatever you set the direction to, that's the main axis. We set it to column now, and we set space between. So it will just space all the elements between them. Just give space between them. Then this align item center, it works on the cross axis, which is the main. If the main axis is the row, the cross axis is the column. If the main axis is the column, the cross axis is the row, something like that. So align items works on the cross axis. Now we set it to column. So the cross axis should be the row. It sets everything in the center of this element. Later on, I also have like I'll push this code to GitHub also, and I'll kind of like, let me just send you guys the link so you can check it out. I also have some materials here like you can use to learn more about it. You can watch the YouTube video, maybe then read. You can read about it on W3 or watch the YouTube video as well. I have some materials here for. Let me just send it to you guys now, so before I forget, or maybe later on. Yeah. Let me just get to the next. Grid. The way grids work is like instead of using flex, which are more like two-dimensional. You know, flex, they are like two-dimensional, like you can have it in this direction or you can have it in this direction. Grid kind of gives us more flexibility. For instance, now, assuming these slides here were HTML and CSS, this would have been something like a flex box. Then maybe the position was set to column, the flex direction was set to column. But a grid now, we can have more elements. Like for instance, now we can have this column, we can have another column, we can have another. Let me just show you an example here. So this is just the basic HTML. I just created 12 elements. Then I gave them some basic styles. So let's just take it one after the other. So grid and flexbox has some similarities. If you notice in flexbox, we had to use this display flex. But in grid, if you want to create a grid, you use display grid. If we just refresh the page, nothing will happen because we have not set the rows and columns for the grid. So now we can set the columns. Let me just like this. I just want to explain the concept first before I start going into all this stuff. Let's say we want it to have, let's say, 2 columns each. Let's say each should be, let's say maybe say 50 pixels. Let's say 50 pixels. So now we have two grids, each 50 pixels each. So now, if you notice, they are all packed together. We can also add some space to them by using this grid gap. You can give them, let's say, 10 pixels worth of space. So they all have spaces now. They're a little bit easier to read. So now these columns are used to, as in, they're used to set the number of columns you want. We can also set the number of rows we want. Let's just comment this part out and let's set our columns. Let me just, sorry, let's set our rows, sorry. Now let's set our rows. The same way we set columns, we can just set like the number of columns we want to have. Sorry. A minute, please. Let me check out something.
You need to close the grid template row.
Hello? Okay, yeah. Can't just set two columns like 50 pixels each because we only set two columns to be, we only set the rows, you have to set the size as well. But we have more than two here. So like we can't just, if we set only two, then the others will assume values. So let's just comment this part out, let them be only two for now. So there are two now. Let me just assume I increase this one to be like 100. You notice like this one is twice as large as, like 2 is twice as large as 1. So like we can use grid template rows to set the rows. We can also use grid template columns to set the columns. We can do something like this. Let's say, okay, let me add some other elements, let them be 4. So we can do something like this now. If you, from our code, the grid template columns, we set 2 columns. The first one, which is this column, should have 50 pixels worth of space, like 50 pixels. The second one should also be 50 pixels. Then our template rows sets the rows. The first row, we set it to be 50 pixels. Then the second row, we set it to be 100 pixels. With grid, we have like more flexibility over Flexbox because we, when it comes to arranging some more complex layout, when it comes to setting up some more complex layouts, we can also use this .if property, this infra property. It kind of like does the calculation for us. So let's assume now we set it for only 2 elements. It will calculate the available space and set it to 1 fractional unit. Kind of like if we wanted it to be, if we wanted it to have 3 elements on this page now, it will like, if you wanted the row to have elements each, it will calculate the available space, then it will like kind of approximate it, then give it to each element. We can also set it on the row. It can be like 1. I was thinking we should be able to set it on the row. Oh, maybe it works. I think it works only on the column, sure. But, and by default, if you don't have a row, like it's automatically assumes some value for that. The gap, we talked about the gap earlier. The gap just sets this, just gives it this space around it. If we remove the gap, then everything will be like joined together on the page. But when we add a gap, like we can set it to anything, maybe like 5 pixels if we want a smaller gap. Then it gives it less space between them. Okay, another thing we can do is we can make some item take more rows, maybe, or let's use columns first. We can make some item maybe take more columns than expected, than just the regular. Like for instance, now we set the grid. This item is on the child elements themselves, not the container. Like this is item 1, item 2, 3, and 4. We commented out the rest. We just want to work with these ones for now. So now, when I set the grid column to 1/3, this 1 refers to here, right here. The 2, but there's no 2 share. 2 is somewhere around here. Then 3 here. So when you set it to something like this, you're telling this item 1 should take up 2 blocks. Like I can set it to something like 4, and to just take up the whole. You just take up the whole row like this. Then one thing about grid is they also, like if you notice now, the rest of the elements take longer space on this vertical, on this horizontal plane like this. Like the rest of the elements moved under. They went to somewhere else where there was space. We can also set oh, you can also set the grid row. Let's assume we also want it to take the same amount of space. Now the grid row works just like the column, but instead of taking 2 columns, we set this one. Instead of taking 2, let me just show you an example first. So like, let me get rid of this thing. Yeah.
I searched heaven for you.
Okay. The grid row is just like the grid column, except that it takes up like space on the row itself. Like this is like 1, somewhere around here is 2, here is 3. Assuming we set it to something like actually it won't work. It shouldn't work even though we set it to 4 because it doesn't have that much space. Yeah, well, it's kind of shifted a bit, but there's nothing there, so we set it to 3. We can maybe create a little bit more complex layout. Like let's assume we want to do something else. Let's say 2 should take up. Let's say 2 to the 4. Then 2 take up the rest of the available space here. Like we can kind of arrange things anyhow we want with grids. Okay. Like I think I'm almost done with what I have now. You can, if you have any questions, you can also bring them up now. Return to slides. Let me send you guys the link to the GitHub in case you want to check out the code, maybe. I just sent the link to the GitHub in case you guys want to check the code. You can like drop any questions you have, then we'll like talk about it.
Okay, sorry, can I ask a question?
Okay.
I'm a bit confused about grid columns. Then you wrote 1/3. I didn't get that part. Even grid rows, you said 2/4. I didn't understand. How does the dimension work with the 2/4 and co?
Yeah, let me just hide this stuff so I can see better. Let's start with, okay, let me just get rid of this one. Okay, let's start with some basic stuff. Let me just explain the grid column first. So like the grid column starts from 1 going down. So somewhere, I told you like somewhere around here is supposed to be 1. You know, we set our grid using this one infra stuff. This infra, okay, this infra now, I can also do something else. Let me just answer your question first on column before I show you some other things. This grid column, we set it to 2 to 4. So now somewhere around here is 1. So we wanted it to start from 2. So somewhere around here is 2. Somewhere around here is 3. Somewhere around here is 4. So when we set the grid column to start from 2 and get to 4, what it will do is to start from here and get to here, which is 4. Right here in the grid row, we set it to start from 1 and get to 2. Somewhere around here in the grid row is 1, here is 2. So the grid looks as if we didn't change the row. But if we change the row to stop at 3, it kind of extends a little bit below. It kind of extends a little bit below. It gets somewhere here. Yeah.
Lisa, your editor is covering the out with the browser.
Can you see it now? Like,
Yes, yes,
okay,
can
you
see
guys
now.
can see it now. Let me just, yeah. So like the grid row starts from 1 and up here, this line is 1, here is 2, here is 3, here is 4. So now we set the row to start from 1 and get to 3. That's why I started from here, 2, and then stopped here, which is 3. Then the column, we set it to start from 2 and stop at 4. For the column, here is 1, here is 2, here is 3, here is 4. So when we set it to start from 2, it will start from here. And to get to where we set our template columns up here. Assuming we had more columns, it would behave different. Let's just add maybe one more column. So we added one extra column now. So this grid column now should start from 2 and get to 4. But instead of it taking up the rest of the page, there's one extra column here because it should start here 1, 2, 3. If you want it to take up a little bit more space, we can extend it to like 5. So now it's start 1, 2. This is 2 where it should start from. Grid column. Remember, we're working on the item 2, which is this one up here. So 2, it started from here, went somewhere around here. Somewhere around here should be 3, 4, then 5. We changed it to 5. That's why it's still taking up the remaining space on the page. One other thing is, let's just remove this other column.
Understand, sir.
Okay. With this, do you have any other question?
Yeah, I think your cursor is not like synchronizing with your explanation.
Oh, okay. I'll take it a little bit slow so I to, yeah. Okay. One other thing we can do is this infra. When we set it to 1, set this one to 1, set this one to 1. It will look at this page, divide it into 3 equal parts. Then let's just set it back to 3 now. 1, 1, 1. So there will be 3 columns. And let me also remove this part. Let me remove this part as well. Okay, when I refresh the page, it go back to the original shape. We have 3 columns here. This one infra. This is the first column. This is the second column. This is the third column. This one FR, what it does is like it looks at the available space, then divides them according to according to how many they are. Right now there are 3, and each of them should take up one kind of unit. I don't know, like for instance, now there are 3. This one should take up 1, 1. That's why they're all equal. We can set this thing maybe like the first one to 2. So it takes more space than the rest of them. If you notice now, this one is twice as large as, is around 2 times this, is around 2 times this one and this one. So like we can also do something like that. We can use this FR to also set maybe some of the columns to take up more space than the other. That was just what I wanted to say earlier. Is there any other question? Do you guys have any other question, maybe on flex or on grid or position, something like that? Hello?
For the GitHub, the link that is saying, I tried opening it, it's saying repository MC. So I don't think there is something.
Sorry, don't not just now, Sha. I will still push this code to GitHub. I've not yet pushed it, but like I already created the GitHub for it. I'll just push this code. After this session, I'll push it, then you can try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But when you try, make sure you go to this README file. You see it there, Sha. If you go into this CSS position, you will see like there is a tutorial on W3, like I pasted the link here. I also encourage you to watch this short YouTube video on it as well to explain it better. Like there's a YouTube video to each of them. If you want to also check the slide, the link to the slide is also there. Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. Is there any other question?
I have a question. Hello, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you. Your question.
Yeah, just based on the material you just sent to us, it's saying that the repository is empty. The GitHub material.
I didn't hear you clearly, but I said if you are asking about the GitHub, immediately after this session, I will push this code to GitHub. So when you check it, you will now see everything. But also make sure you check this README file. In there, you will see some extra materials you guys will go through, and it's going to help a lot. Like you can check out some other tutorials on CSS positioning with these links here on Flexbox. With these links. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
I think I was supposed to give you guys some kind of task to do, but let's see. I don't know what I just want something to do so you guys can just maybe refresh on what we did. Let's use grid. Okay. What you guys will do now, let me just, should I type it out? Or like, I want you guys to create a grid that has 4 columns. This one has 3 columns, although one of the columns is very big. So I want you guys to create a grid that has 4 columns. I also, okay, 4 columns. Then I also want you guys to, let's leave flexible. Okay, let's go to flexible first. I also want you guys to create something that looks like this. Like maybe if just design this thing just as it is, but just design it a little, kind of transform this thing as into a nav bar, just very basic nav bar, nothing special. I think that should be it.
Excuse me, please, is it possible to like maybe you get across to a dossier so that you can just coin it into a kind of a general stuff and deliver it to us, because we have something we are working on currently, so that
Okay.
yeah, so you can just give it to us and we know that okay, this is what we are working on and when we are turning it in, because we are still working on something right away.
Okay, since you guys are even working on something, just should I just type it out and put in this file so you guys can check it out in GitHub? Let me just type it out here as well. Like whenever you guys are through with that one, you can just do this one. So what's this? I don't know, my system looks like it's very slow now. I don't know. It has been through a lot, I guess. Whew. Just close it. Open it again. I'm just trying to type it out. And if you have any other question for the meantime, you guys can just ask maybe anything on grid or flexbox or maybe positioning, just some basic stuff.
So I just have a question.
Okay, speak up, I can't hear you properly.
Okay, it's just for you to just refresh our mind on how to create those grids and columns. I didn't really get the explanation.
Okay, yeah. I will. Let me just type out this first.
So as per the assignment, we often don't get assignment from our tutors directly. They come through our facilitators like ADOZ. So they are the ones that post it on Discord for us to,
Okay, so I should just give it to him. Oh yeah,
yeah,
okay.
so he's going to pass it to us. So you don't have to stress yourself to it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Let's go over grid again. Okay. And the grid template column here. Let's just first of all go over the very basic example first. So now, let me start afresh. So now, let's start afresh from the grid, with the grid. So now this is like our elements. I style them a bit so they look nice. But I don't want you guys to just focus on the styles I gave them. Just the only thing I want to show you guys is just grid. So now to create a grid, first thing is to set the display to grid. If you wanted to create a flex box, you set the display to flex. It's very important. If you want to create a flex box, you set the display to flex. So this one to open. Okay. If you want to create a grid, you set the display to grid. So our grid now doesn't really do anything until we start setting the properties like the template column. When we set the template column, we can give it any unit we like. I can be like now, let's say, let this thing be 2 rem. And let this one also be, let's say, 2 rem. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what we choose. Then these columns, they are all joined together. Like it's not very readable. So a way to separate them is to use this grid gap. When we use grid gap, we can give it any unit we like. But I want to separate them by, let's say, 10 pixels. I want them to have a gap of 10 pixels, each of them, so we can see them well. Let's refresh the page. So like, give them some space. So this, if we keep on using this rem and this pixel, if we keep on using rem and pixel, it will be hard for us to kind of like get the right sizes we want. So we normally use this FR to do it. For instance, now, if I wanted to create 2 columns, I could just use one FR, then it will divide the page into 2. Let's refresh the page. So it divided it into 2 columns. If I wanted it to create 3 equal columns, I can be like 1 FR again to create it will create 3 columns for us. If I wanted maybe the column in the middle, which is the second column, to have, let's say, to take up more space than these other ones. So now this 2 FR, it's equal to this one FR plus this one FR. So these 2 now, this middle one, we set it to 2 FR now. It should take up more space than it's usually used to. If you notice now, it is like 2 times as large as it should be. And if you notice, these guys are the ones suffering it. They are becoming a little smaller. This one takes up more column now. We can just keep it as it was we can just take it back as it was to 1 FR again. 1 FR again. So the page is divided evenly. Okay. We can also set the grid template rows. We can use the FR to set it as no. Let me just use pixels, so I'll just do a little bit more. Let's say we want to set the first row to, in fact, with rows, we don't even need to set all of them. We can just say just be 100 pixels. Then each of them will just be 100 pixels. And sorry, the first one, yeah. Sorry, Sam, I was wrong. Sorry. We also need to set the rows we also need to set the units on the rows as well. This 100 here is just this first row. Then we also need to set this to 100, so it will be equal to others. Let's do like 100 pixels as well. So this one is equal to this one. These 2 rows are the same height. We can maybe increase the second row if we wanted maybe to be a little longer. So now this row is longer than this one. So we can set we can like shape it. We can set the height, and we can set how high, like the height of each row using these template rows. There are other attributes and other properties, sorry, we can use. But like these ones I just mentioned here, like the basic stuff. So I just want to keep it as 100. Let's just use 100 for now. So now you can also set each individual item to take up maybe this much space or that much, this much height or that much width, like to take up more columns or more rows. So for instance, now we have only 4 items. I commented out the rest, which there should be 12, sure, but there are 4. Let's just use that 4. So now let's say the first item, we can set its grid. Let's comment out this one. Let's start with the column. We can set its grid column to take up 1, 2, 3. Here, yeah. Here is 1. Here is 2, right here. Somewhere around here should be 2. Here, 3. Somewhere around here is 3. So when we set item 1 to take up column 1, 2, 3, what we are saying is let it start from here, go and stop somewhere around here. So now let's, I haven't saved the file, let me save it. So let's refresh the page. So now our grid column takes up the space we wanted. We wanted it to start from 1, which is right here, somewhere around here. If you can see my mouse, my listen, here the arrow. 1, 2, 3. We can set it to just take 2, which is the usually it should take. Two starts. Why it looks like nothing changes, because we set it to 2. 2 starts from when 1 starts from here, then it ends here, which is 2. Here's the 2. So we can also set the row if we want. Let's just comment out the column. We're not using it now. We can set the row to start from 1, maybe, and span to 3. But there's not that much element. So let me just add a few more. Or let me just add everything. I don't want that to be too much. So now we set for item 1, we set the grid row to start from 1 and get to 3. Okay, let me scroll down a bit. So now this item 1 is this one here. We set the grid row to start from 1 and get to 3. We started from here, somewhere around here. This point is 1. Here is 2. Then we told it to stop at 3. It stopped here, 3. If you want, we can make it to get to 4 by just changing that value there. We can make it to get to 5. We can make it to get to 6. Let's just make it to get to, let's say, 4. So check, it was somewhere around here. Now to get to somewhere around here. So now we started from 1, 2, 3. Here now is 4. So we can also do the same thing in the column. We can make it take more column than it should have. Let's make it take up to 3. So now it should start. Now we set the column to 3. It should start from here, 1, 2, then it will get to here, 3. Then it will do the same thing in the row, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will take up this entire block, this whole block. Let's just refresh the code, the page. Okay, now if you noticed, it took up the space we expected it. It took up 2. Let me open it up. It took up 2 columns. 1, 2. Like it took up 2 columns, but if you want to type it out, you type 1 and let it stop at 3. So 1, 2, 3, which is equivalent to 2 columns. Then we wanted it to take up 3 rows. Then we start from 1 and stop at 4. Let's just do it like this. If you want it to take up 2 columns, you just specify 1. It stops at 3. It doesn't include this 3. Just so, for instance, here is 0. Here's 1. Sorry, here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. So as we specified 3, it will take up 2 columns. So don't think as we make it start from 1 and stop at 3, it will take up 3 columns. No, it's going to take up 2. Then the row, we made it to stop at 4. So now it's going to take up 3 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. But it takes up 3 rows. I don't know if you're getting me. Hello? I'm guessing maybe you've understood it or something. If you have not, just ask me where you're still confused.
Got it.
Huh?
It's entering, sir.
Okay, yeah. Let's just comment out this part. So now this is our basic grid, very basic grid. The only thing we set here was the columns, and we said the row should take 100 pixels. If you notice now, these rows, we only set 2 rows to take up 100 pixels. And if you notice, this first one, this second one are bigger than these 2. Let me just make them a little bigger so you will notice the difference. So in the rows, if we don't set the rows, wait. If we don't set the rows, it will take up the default or his normal amount of space. But as we set these 2 to 200 pixels, they take up more space. So now we can like take them back to 100 pixels. Then we also need to set up the other rows, or we can just set it to, I think you can set it to auto, and it will just do it by itself. Yeah, you can set it to auto and leave it. If you remove it, it's the same thing as setting it as auto. Just nothing happens. It's just the default height. So now let's work on this second one. We want the grid column to start from 2 and get to 5. It won't work for some reasons. We don't have up to 5. Okay, let me just change the shape of our grid. Like, one thing about grid is they are very flexible. Let's say we want it now to have 5 columns. Let me comment this out so you take a look at it first before we start working on it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 columns. So now, in this item 2 is this one here. This is the item 2. We want the grid column to start from 2 and end at 5. So now, here's 1. We don't want it to start from 1. We want it to start from 2. Here is 2. Somewhere around here is 2. So now I want it to stop at 5. So the column we go from this 2 to here 3 to here 4 to here 5. It should stop somewhere around here. This is 5. So now for the row, we want the row to start from 1 and get to 3. So the row will start from here 1, 2, and to stop at 3. So now let's save our file and refresh the page. So now it took up 3 columns. 1, yeah. That 3 columns, if the exact position is at is 2 to 5. So started from here and got to here. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the grid row started from here 1, then here is 2, then here is 3. We can shift let's just assume we want to change the place this 2 is at. We can also do that. If you notice now, we changed the 2. We said 2 should start from, we changed the row 2 should start from. We said 2, the item 2 should start from the second row and get to the third. So here is 1, somewhere around here is 1. then it should start from 2, which is here, and it should get to 3, which is here. So that's just what we did. We can make it maybe a little bigger. We can take it to 4. Let's refresh the page. Okay. So now our roll started from 2 and it got to 4. So somewhere around, let me take this a little bit low. Okay. Somewhere around here is 2. Somewhere around here is 3. We said let it get to 4. Here now is 4. Is there any other question on grid or any other one?
Flex.
Hello?
Sir, can you
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I can positioning work in grid.
I don't know how to put it for you now. Like grid is like a way of positioning things. So like when you use grid, you like when you use grid, you change the way position works. That's like it's kind of complicated to explain to you. Just know the reason why we stopped, why we like now we can achieve something like this with positions. We can set this thing in a certain way. They will be like that. But we have to set each element individual. We have to be like, you move to the right by this amount, you move to the left, you move bottom, you know, that kind of stuff. So just know like that's why we prefer using grid. You're not supposed to use position and grid. Like you can just let's say you can just work with this element. Let's say this is a grid. Then under it we can have maybe another basic stuff. Let's say or let me just leave it here. Like just know that you can have your grid maybe separately, then you have your other elements. Yeah, you can have these elements now here. This could be a grid. Normally it could be just a, let's say, it could be just maybe a grid that has 2 columns. Then we can also have our code under here, maybe that does that you can use to maybe set the position to something else. Of course, you can also do something like let me just take this back. Let me say 2 columns. That should be enough. Let me refresh first. It's still possible. It should still be possible to set the let's say the position to, let's say okay, it's not actually a good idea to set it on this one. It's possible to like, let's say maybe get this first item. I think no, I don't think it should work, but let's just check it out. Let's see as it goes. No, I don't want to try it out. I don't think it should. I don't think it will work. But just what I'm just trying to say is you can have your grid maybe do their stuff. Then you can still have maybe your basic other elements maybe under it or on top of it doing their own work. You can use position to maybe display them at this place or that place, something like that. But you're not actually going to use position. Like let's assume we use position fixed on this element now. You know what position fixed will do? Position fixed will take this first element out of this normal flow of the page. You understand? So when it takes it out of the flow of the page, the grid is no more in charge of that element. So it will kind of affect our grid somehow. So we're not supposed to kind of like use position on it, except you actually know what you're doing. So I think just take it like that. You can maybe read more about it. Maybe when you read the material, you can maybe understand a little more.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, your question.
Between these positions like this, I'm setting out our layout.
Okay.
Position first and then grid. Which one is the best among the
Yeah,
two?
each of them has their kind of advantage and disadvantage. Like now, Flexbox, it's very easy for it to work with when you have maybe some kind of when you have data now and you just want to maybe easily give space between them and do some stuff, basic stuff, you understand? Flexbox is great. We normally use Flexbox in navbars and stuff. But when you want to create more complex layouts, like this grid, Flexbox can't easily create something like this for you. But grid is like perfect when you want to create some other complex kind of layouts. Like you may want this first item to take up this whole row, the second item to take up this whole column. You understand all those kind of stuff. Grid gives you more flexibility in that aspect. You also use positions for some other things. You may want to create a nav bar. Okay, yeah, that now is a good idea to answer the other question this guy brought up. You may have let's say it's not normally a good idea, Sha, but you may have something like this now. Let's say this whole element like this. It's a grid. So now we can wrap it with, let's say, another. Let me just create the. Let me just we can wrap it with, let's say, another element, and we can then give that element, let's say, a position. Then it will stay there. Like we can say something like class, let's say pose or something, I don't know. Then we can come here and be like, and give it a position or fixed maybe. And one other thing I said, it takes, when you use, that's also one reason why we don't want to use position, because they kind of take the elements out of the normal flow of the page. Let's just use, let's use, just use absolute. It's not going to look like much. Then we can maybe do something like right 0, just to take the page, just to take it to the right. So like you can use position with grid, but you might just have to wrap those grid in the position, in the position, then use it the way you want. But as you can see, like something like absolute and relative, like if you don't really understand how they work, you might like affect your grid in some ways. It might affect your grid in some ways you won't understand. Is there any other question? Hello? If there's no other question, we might come to an end though. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah, the question.
Okay, it's not about what we did in class, it's just curiosity. How did you get the 1, 2, 3, like all of this? How did you get them looking like it's enclosed in a rectangular gray box?
Okay, like I have let's open our grid. I have some styles here. I have some. Yeah. I'll send you guys the I sent you guys the link to the GitHub. So after this, I'll just push the code. Just know that what we learned, I put it in this learn.css, but this style.css just contains some basic style so that it will just look cool and stuff. Yeah. Okay. So like this is the style. Okay. I could just change maybe the color now to, let's say, I don't know. Maybe let's make it look something else. So now it's just, yeah, basic stuff. We made it look green. So like this, the basic styles I apply to it is inside styles.css, but what we actually learned is inside learn.css. So this is the code. I'll just leave it as it is, push it to GitHub. Is there any other question? Any other? So Flexbox, normally use them for navbar. Flexbox they are more like one directional. You can maybe make them a column. You can use them as a row, or you can use them as a column. But grids are more like two-dimensional. You can, as in, arrange things in different ways. You can make this the first maybe element here, maybe take more space, or take more rows, or maybe take more columns, sorry, or maybe take more rows, all those kind of stuff. So let me say it again, grids, they are normally good for more complex layout. Flexbox, they are normally used when the layout and all that. Maybe you just want to create a navbar. Navbars are very basic. Maybe you have the brand logo and the brand here, the logo. You might have a few links here. Then you might have a button here. I don't know whether you guys you're noticing the flow of things. Okay, let's just do something now with Flexbox. First of all, let me just reduce the containers height. Okay. Now let's go into the HTML, and instead of this gibberish text we have here, let's just maybe add something more better. Let's say this is logo. Then here we can have some kind of, let's just make it expand. I just want to do some basic stuff, and let's say home about page or something. Then let's just do the same thing here. So now, like, this is looking a little bit more like a navbar now. So we normally use Flexbox to create very basic layouts. Like when you want to create a navbar, you can use something like Flexbox. You just, like now, we can change our Flexbox a little. Like for instance, now there is only space in between. We can add maybe space around them. So now there's space around them and in between them as well. If we remove this align items center, then you notice they all take up, like the text shift to the top, but they kind of take up the whole thing. We can have, I think we have align items start as well. If you want them to be at the start, yeah, they have align item start. If you want them to be at the start, they have align items end. If you want them to be at the kind of end, like the bottom. So we want to use center so it looks better. So like here, basic stuff. So any other question? So I'm guessing we should come to an end Abby.
Yes.
Okay. I'll stop sharing my screen then. Yeah, we're done. I hope you learned a few things. I'm Emmanuel, by the way. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. So no one has any other question. I want to assume everybody understand the class, because even me, I understood a lot of things. All right. Mr. Emmanuel, thank you so much for this session. Thank you. You finished before 10. I think you're like the first facilitator that has tried to finish before 10. You're the first facilitator that has actually tried to finish within the allocated time frame. Thank you so much for it.
Okay,
I think, okay.
And I apologize for the delay at the beginning. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Oh, no, it's fine. So in the absence of any other question, I think I have to just stop recording first, because I remember someone asked me something about having issues with Replit. So I want to just see if I'll share my screen. So I'll help you guys, show you guys how to do that thing. Is that fine? Are there anyone that have any problem with it? Please
So
reply in the comments.
for the meantime, I'm going to be going off.
Yeah, no problem. Definitely, no problem. No problem.
Okay,
Definitely.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks. All right. Okay.